So what if you did economics without money? I think there's a kind of a self-delusion, or well, that's not the right word for it, but money is like already quantified, right? And so we naturally think, well, if this stuff is quantified, then we can just take a bunch of accounting figures and throw them into our logical system, and we can decide how many of these things were credits and how many of them were debits, and you know, just put all that stuff on a spreadsheet, and somehow we're gonna like figure out the whole economy from just looking at those things. Well, that's kind of misleading. What if you were looking at real things and not distracted by figures? So that you might just look at some real thing like a sweet potato that you could eat, and seeing the structure, how these things are just growing off of the sweet potato, and how the sweet potato sprouts just by being thrown in a thing of water, and how it's got all these roots. And I need one hand for the camera, so I can't show you how I pop these, but uh, it's all pretty self-evident. You pop one of these things off. I like them to have some roots on them, and then you stick them in a pot, and you pour the soil down the sides, and there's you have a sweet potato. And then the trouble is the damn grasshoppers want to eat them all. There's a mosquito larvae in there. Okay, but how would you do uh, uh, economics without money? Well, I would look and I'd say, well, if somebody grew these sweet potatoes, you can eat those. So that was productive labor. And so was somebody who makes my shoes so that I don't have to walk barefoot, and with what's left of my feet, believe me, I can't be walking barefoot. Uh, Food, clothing, and shelter. The carpenter is necessary. The guy who invents stock derivatives is not. All he does is take like a bunch of instruments that show ownership of one thing, and then mix it together with some other thing, and handle it all around, and they just fund things. But the amount of actual things in the world doesn't change at all. So they're just playing this game with you can't see nothing that way. They're just playing this game with money. Well, uh, this is what tells us of the fallacy of a lot of things. Is if you can look uh, at the economy and not think of the money first. Imagine if you came from some planet that didn't even understand what money was. You would have a hard time understanding why the guy at Goldman Sachs, who doesn't do anything useful in his entire life, is given millions of dollars, and he can go out and buy yachts and private planes and all that kind of crap. And then somebody who creates stuff that people need gets just nothing. It doesn't make any damn sense. And to understand the economy, you might actually have to look at it without say, I don't want to hear about the money. I want to hear about the real stuff. So it might have been my friend came over. Or he just knows somebody he wants to bark to. So these things that have actual value, that's the thing to look at. So therefore, do you want full employment? Well, that's a stupid question. Why would you want anybody to not have an income? Why would you want anybody to who has like useful skills not to be using them? These are Mexican lilacs. That's about a 3-year-old thing from a division. That doesn't make any sense. When I was listening last night, this morning, however you want to put it, to a guy talking about post-Keynesian economics, which is like after they found out that you could like deficit spend, and I mean basically Keynes was right, but the World War II ended the Depression, but the beginning of ending the Depression, Roosevelt already had down because he put the people back to work. Duh. And that was like something that for some reason or other Hoover and those guys couldn't figure out. Well, you need to work and make stuff so that people will have stuff. Then you need a way of distributing it approximately equally among the people. If your system gives a whole lot to a few, it's a lousy system. And the few really are not the big producers. Like the Ayn Rand idea. Well, Ayn Rand was an idiot. So anyway, the thing to take away, economics without money, thing to take away is you know now that you can analyze the economic system by looking at it and saying, well, you know what? I'm not going to look at the money. I'm going to look at just the real things. And if the real things don't make sense, then some analysis that's made from a medium of exchange that's ultimately just pieces of paper or virtual paper on a computer, that's not explaining to you like how to run a country at all. And even like inflation, inflation is caused by greed. Come on, that's obvious enough. They can raise their prices, so they do. They can make the government give a bunch of public money to them, so they do. They made billions and billions a day at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was all a scam. And they took that out of you. But it's not the number in their bank account that counts. It's the fact that they have a yacht and you can't even afford a little aluminum boat to go out on the lake and catch a couple of crappie. That's the problem. And nobody has to show you a bunch of facts and figures and all that kind of stuff for you to understand. You work, you don't get crap. They don't work, they get a lot. That is wrong. So, keep it in mind all the time. When they start getting, like, this guy that I was listening to last night, he was on that Unlearning Economics channel. Well, he was really confused. He couldn't seem to get anywhere because he was listening to all these numbers, and they become like number puzzles in one of those books that they used to have a lot of, where 1071 numerical puzzles, and how to do this and how to do that. It's just, well, it's algebra is usually the answer to all those, but uh, you know, the it's a number puzzle if you want a number puzzle, but if you want reality, it's simply a problem of, like, if I grew these little sweet potatoes, and if there weren't the grasshoppers out there, and I could have this thing and I could finish it in this 5-inch pot here, and then I could sell it, and somebody might go, well, I didn't mind giving you $5 for that thing. And if I had, like 1,000 of them or something, it'd be worth doing. But if I grew 1,000 little sweet potatoes in 5-inch pots, and they were like, great big bushy plants that, look like nice house plants actually, well, then I created some value. But if I just went and did a bunch of, arithmetic gymnastics, and I actually even think that they're cool because they use like some mathematical principles or whatever to do it. But, they just took a bunch of bad loans and just put them into a form where you couldn't tell what they were, and then sold them again. And then they had a crisis when it turned out that the economy had piles of investments and bad loans. And what did that teach you, the '08 crash? The simplest way to look at it was, you have an unjust, screwed up system in which a few people control everything and make themselves richer and richer as they try to make everybody else poorer and poorer. And they didn't produce anything, and what they did was completely stupid at the level of, like, housing. Somebody, if they wanted to buy a house, well, yeah, you should be able to just go and get a house, and then go and get a job, and then pay for your house. But the fallacy is that all this capitalism needs to be involved. There's all these rentier incomes being made on nothing. And that's why the United States is going to crash and burn, because we're spending all of our money rewarding these people for nothing, while we aren't getting the actual productive stuff done. And they put barricades in front of them. Now they want to get rid of the small farmers. That's the most efficient producers of the most necessary of all goods, is food. If you don't have food, I could maybe get by somehow with wearing a skin off of a wild hog or something, but I can't get by without eating food. I might be able to crawl in underneath a bush and sleep, or something like that, but I can't absolutely, I'm way too old and messed up for that, but like, the one thing that there's just no compromise on is food. The body has to take in stuff or you die. And yet, the quality and availability to all of the people of food is messed up by people who don't produce anything. And that doesn't make any difference whether you call it capitalism or something, or somebody patiently explains all these transactions to me and tells me why, well, you have to have incentives and markets and yarkets and targets. I don't have any of that fucking stuff. Don't be stupid. I don't need it. What you need is the food. You need an economic system in which the people that are capable of growing food are growing enough of it so that there's some for everybody. And the idea immediately, we had economies where the productivity of labor was 1% of what it is today. I mean, within just, in our own history books. Those ships that people came over here, to steal this new land from the Indians, those ships were just tiny little boats that had large overworked crews jammed into uncomfortable. Today you just take a big steel boat and drive over here, and you got 1,000 times that much stuff, 1,000,000 times that much stuff. Everything is like vastly more efficient because the workers have worked and worked. Like the engineer workers have done engineering and all those things. That we don't have enough for everybody is just so stupid that, if somebody starts telling you that, well, the Malthusian dilemma, well, we just don't have enough places for people to live, and that's why we got them in tents on the sidewalk. I mean, you got to take somebody like that and just say, look, you're out of the legislature, you're out of the political thing. We don't want to listen to you anymore. You don't know what you're talking about. But get out of the way so that those people that work can go and get something done. And if you're lucky, we'll feed you, even though you're a useless eater. All the people. Why is it this Carl Schwab, the quintessential useless eater? Somebody who actually produces, not only doesn't produce anything, actually screws up production. And he's talking about useless eaters. I mean, if there wasn't enough to go around, he's the first one I wouldn't feed. I'd look at people and say, well, you got calluses on your hand and dirt under your fingernails, you must have been doing something useful. I mean, maybe it was just like growing a bunch of squash plants that got killed by the squash wilt. But I know you were trying, at least you got out there and did something. This clown doesn't do a thing. And you've got to just look at what's made and who's making it. What's the value? What's the real value of stuff? And yeah, it's labor. It's work that creates value. That's all there is to that. And you don't have to figure out how many dollars per hour or something like that. It doesn't make any difference. The point is, are you growing food? Are you building housing? And are you making clothes that people need? Are you transporting stuff? Or are you dorking around in an office making a whole lot of money by manipulating the flow of money in a system that's designed to reward manipulators of the flow of money, even though they don't produce a damn thing? And if you're like this post-Keynesian guy that I was listening to last night, I can believe it, how he's got all this education in economics, and yet he's sitting there and he's just completely confused. He just didn't seem to be able to figure anything out. And this is talking about all this stuff, and yeah, I know you can do all this stuff with statistics. It's just too bad you can't grow a sweet potato. Well, anyway, that was whatever it was, and it's done.